In 1955, to silence rumors surrounding the sexuality of box office king, Rock Hudson, Universal Pictures, orchestrated a hasty staged marriage to secretary Phyllis Gates. But behind the blissful snapshots in Life magazine lay a grim reality. Hollywood functioned as a brainwashing machine where stars were forced to burn same-sex love letters immediately after reading them, and secret lovers had to slip through back doors disguised as plumbers. Did you know that even America's dad, Robert Reed, lived in constant fear of exposure throughout his 15-year run on The Brady Bunch? Or that Cary Grant, the ultimate symbol of masculinity, shared a home with a male soulmate for over a decade under the guise of a bachelor apartment? Drawing from declassified documents in the celluloid closet and shocking memoirs, we are stepping into the locked backstage of 15 Hollywood legends, where ultimate stardom was traded for ultimate silence. 1. Rock Hudson, a paper fortress, and a $1,000 marriage contract. If anyone represents the grim price of fame, it is Rock Hudson. In the 1950s, he was the very definition of masculinity, 6 feet 4 inches tall with a deep, warm voice, and a smile that melted the hearts of countless young women. But behind the velvet curtains of Universal Pictures, Rock was a prisoner of the very stardom he had created. The real fuse was lit in 1955 when the tabloid Confidential threatened to leak evidence of his true sexuality. To protect their golden goose, Universal made a ruthless yet effective move, orchestrating a lavender marriage, a term for arranged marriages to hide a star's homosexuality. The bride was none other than Phyllis Gates, the secretary to Rock's agent. They married after only a few weeks of staged dating. While the public swooned over happy photos in Life magazine, their home was in reality a cold battlefield. Later documents revealed that Rock frequently had to sneak out at night or invite friends to his home under the guise of repairmen to avoid the prying eyes of neighbors. The marriage collapsed after 3 years, but Rock's mask remained firmly in place. It wasn't until 1985, as his once athletic frame withered from AIDS, that the world realized with a shock they had been in love with an illusion for 30 years. His death was not just a personal tragedy. It was a dagger plunged through the deceptive veil of Hollywood. But while Rock Hudson chose to build a fake family to survive, his next colleague had an even more sophisticated cloaking technique, turning his private life into an unsolvable mystery. 2. Raymond Burr, the master of ghost wives.
York was the last time.
That's right. You're looking super.
So are you.
Yeah.
So are you.
How many years did you do, Perry?
While most stars of that era trembled before the paparazzi, Raymond Burr, the legendary star of the Perry Mason series, chose to confront them with a script more perfect than any detective movie he ever starred in. He didn't just hide his sexuality, he wove a life full of fabricated tragedies to garner public sympathy. For decades, Burr told the press about a first wife who died in a 1943 plane crash, a second wife. He divorced in sorrow and, most poignantly, the death of his only son from leukemia. The story was so heart-wrenching that no one dared to question his private life again. However, according to investigative documents and biographies published after his death, notably, Michael Seth Starr's Raymond Burr, a biography, all those wives and the son never existed. There were no marriage records, no death certificates, only ghosts created by Burr to serve as a shield. In reality, Raymond Burr lived with his same-sex partner Robert Benavides for 35 years until his final breath. Together they tended their gardens, raised birds, and ran a vineyard. But before the camera, they were merely business partners. Burr played the role of a lonely widower so flawlessly that he deceived the entire world, choosing to live within a lie to protect his true love from the clutches of public scrutiny. Burr's method was a retreat into the shadows. However, the next couple chose to live right before everyone's eyes under a label the industry called devoted friendship. 3. Judy Garland and Vincente Minnelli compromise in the Rainbow House. The marriage between the Wizard of Oz legend Judy Garland and gifted director Vincente Minnelli is one of the clearest examples that in Hollywood, two lost souls sometimes find each other not just for love, but to form a survival alliance. This was a unique lavender marriage where both parties seemed fully aware of each other's secrets. Vincente Minnelli was well known in New York's underground art circles as a man who was quite open about his same-sex relationships. However, when he moved to Hollywood to work for MGM, he was forced to mold himself into the image of a refined gentleman. His union with Judy Garland, who was then facing immense pressure from the studio and battling drug addiction, created a perfect cover for both. Post-production documents and accounts from close associates reveal that Judy caught her husband in several extramarital affairs with men. Despite having a daughter together, Liza Minnelli, the marriage eventually crumbled under the weight of the lies. The truth about Vincente Minnelli's sexuality was only discussed publicly decades later through unexpurgated biographies. They had performed a domestic play together, partly to satisfy the networks, and partly to cling to a shred of artificial normalcy in the harsh heart of Hollywood. These arranged marriages helped them keep their careers, but in darker corners of the studios there were black files, far more ruthless, ready to break any genuine romance. 4. Tab Hunter and Anthony Perkins. A romance broken by the Paramount grinder. If there were a romance as poetic as it was painful in the 50s, it was the meeting between Golden Boy Tab Hunter and the soulful-eyed Anthony Perkins. They were polar opposites, one the icon of vitality, the other of complex interiority. Yet in the harshness of Hollywood, they found each other. In the eyes of studio bosses, however, this love was not a romance, it was a PR disaster that had to be neutralized immediately. The fuse was lit when Confidential magazine photographers began scenting the two young men's frequent appearances at private parties. Paramount and Warner Brothers immediately launched a ruthless divide-and-conquer strategy. To tear them apart, the studio staged a series of fake dates between Tab Hunter and starlet Natalie Wood. The public went wild for the new golden couple, while in reality Tab and Natalie were just close friends performing a play to save their own careers. In his shocking memoir, Tab Hunter Confidential, Tab admitted he lived in constant terror whenever he saw Anthony Perkins from afar at awards ceremonies, unable even to say hello. Strict studio control turned a sincere love into an exhausting escape. Eventually, the immense pressure forced them to separate in silence. Anthony Perkins later struggled with harsh psychological therapies to cure his sexuality before marrying, leaving a soul scar that never truly healed for either man. This brutal intervention tore Tab and Anthony apart, but for a king with even greater influence like Cary Grant, control turned into a high society game of hide-and-seek, right in the public eye. 5. Cary Grant, a 12-year friendship, and the art of staged photos.
Child.
Well, then stop behaving like one. Now, if you want to tell me, because I told you.
Cary Grant was not just an actor. He was a brand of sophisticated masculinity that Hollywood allowed no cracks in, yet for over a decade that brand was tethered to another male name, Randolph Scott. The story of the two most handsome men in the world living together in a beachfront house in Santa Monica became one of the most fascinating, open secrets in American entertainment history. To handle the whispers, instead of hiding, Cary Grant and Randolph Scott chose to be cleverly public. They allowed photographers into their home to capture domestic shots, the two of them lifting weights, cooking in the kitchen, or relaxing on the porch. The studio promoted this as a model of noble brotherhood between two bachelors saving costs to focus on their careers. But according to documents from Cary Grant, A Brilliant Disguise, those photos were actually a masterclass PR campaign to transform a romantic relationship into an admirable friendship in the eyes of a conservative public. Though Grant went through 5 marriages, Hollywood insiders always noted that every time he divorced, the first person he turned to was Randolph Scott. Their bond was so deep that even in their twilight years they were seen quietly dining together in the secluded corners of luxury restaurants. Cary Grant spent his life protecting the dream lover image for women, but his true harbor was a place without silk dresses found only in the silent understanding of a male soulmate. If Cary Grant chose to confront through elegance, another acting genius crumbled under the very weight of the mask he had to wear, leading to a life riddled with physical and mental agony. 6. Montgomery Clift. Pain behind the most beautiful face in the world. Elizabeth Taylor once called Montgomery Clift the most beautiful man I've ever seen. But that beauty became the curse that imprisoned him in a 2-decade tragedy. Unlike the shrewdness of Cary Grant or the resignation of Tab Hunter, Montgomery Clift was a sensitive and pure soul who viewed lying about himself as a horrific torture to his craft. During his golden era, Clift was constantly forced by studios to appear alongside starlets to maintain his charming young pilot image. However, behind the glamorous premieres, he frequently fell into depression, turning to alcohol and painkillers to forget that he was playing a role even in his real life. According to Patricia Bosworth's Montgomery Clift, a biography, the struggle between his true identity and Hollywood's expectations drove him to an extreme breakdown. After a horrific 1956 car accident that disfigured his face, Clift's pain only intensified. He was no longer the beauty icon the studios fought to protect, and the truth about his sexuality began to be mocked by tabloids with cruel nicknames. In his final years, Clift lived like a ghost in his own home, gnawing on the loneliness of finding no acceptance. His death at age 45 was described by doctors as the longest suicide in Hollywood history. A painful end for a genius who could find no exit from the maze of prejudice and the dark files of the studios. Clift's life was a somber note in an era of suffocating control, but as society began to shift into the 70s, the first masks began to fall in ways no one expected. 7. Sal Mineo, the lone pioneer in a conservative tide. Instead of choosing silence to enjoy his fame, the rebel without a cause star took a step that in 1972 was considered career suicide. In a shocking interview, Sal Mineo did not hesitate to admit he was bisexual. He used no flowery language to sugarcoat it. He spoke about his sexuality with a calm demeanor, viewing it as an inherent part of being an artist. At a time when homosexuality was still listed as a mental disorder by the American Psychiatric Association, Sal's confession was like a bucket of cold water thrown in the face of the Hollywood elite. The consequences were almost immediate. From a 2-time Oscar nominee and an idol to millions of teenagers, Sal Mineo suddenly became an outcast. Major studios turned their backs, enticing scripts grew scarce, and he was relegated to playing minor roles in small plays or B-list television movies. According to later accounts, Sal told friends he felt a strange sense of liberation, despite his dwindling finances. He spent his final years advocating for LGBTQ+ rights, becoming one of the rare voices to challenge the antiquated studio system. Tragedy struck in 1976 when Sal was murdered right behind his West Hollywood apartment. Initially, the police and the press attempted to steer public opinion toward the idea that the crime was related to his unhealthy lifestyle. However, the truth later proved he was simply the victim of a random robbery. Sal Mineo passed away at age 37, leaving behind a legacy of immense courage. He was the man who proved that while Hollywood can strip away your roles, they cannot strip away the identity of someone who has chosen to live authentically. Sal Mineo's bravery sowed the first seeds of freedom, but for many other stars, the journey to find themselves remained a marathon spanning nearly a lifetime. 8. Jim Nabors, an 82-year-old wedding and the protection of the Hollywood family.
Sergeant Carter, I got my voice back. I can...
There is a heartwarming yet thought-provoking truth in the story of Jim Nabors, famous for his role as the naive, gentle Gomer Pyle. For decades, Jim was a familiar face in every American household. He maintained a clean private life, free of scandal, and possessed a soulful baritone voice. However, Hollywood insiders had long known a secret. Jim Nabors was in a steadfast, decades-long romance with a man named Stan Cadwallader. The miracle was that for over 30 years, not a single tabloid touched this relationship, thanks to the absolute protection of his close colleagues. The respect his peers had for Jim was so profound that they considered keeping his secret a matter of professional ethics. It wasn't until 2013, when same-sex marriage was legalized in Washington, that Jim Nabors, then 82 years old, decided to formalize his relationship. He held no grand press conferences and created no media shocks. He quietly flew to Seattle with Stan to file for marriage after 38 years of living together in silence. "I'm 82, and I want to be with my partner legally," Jim simply shared with Hawaii News Now. The story of Jim Nabors is a testament to a slow but certain change. It shows that sometimes the pressures of the entertainment industry are so cruel that a person must wait until their twilight years to finally hold a marriage certificate. Yet it also reveals another side of Hollywood, the solidarity of artists, to protect a kind soul from the talons of public opinion. Jim passed away in 2017, peaceful in the arms of his legal husband, closing a chapter of life where the truth finally blossomed. While Jim Nabors chose a fulfilling ending in his old age, another, America's mother, stunned the public when she decided to shatter her perfect image on national television. 9. Meredith Baxter. When the perfect mother steps off the screen. In the 1980s, no one could have imagined that Meredith Baxter, the star who played the gentle mother on the hit sitcom Family Ties, had a complex private life filled with gender-related struggles. In the minds of American viewers, she was the icon of traditional family values, a model wife and mother. Therefore, when she appeared on the Today Show in 2009 to come out as gay, all of America was truly shaken. This was not an impulsive decision. At age 62, after 3 marriages to men and having 5 children, Meredith realized she could not continue to deceive herself for one more day. In her memoir, Untied, she shares truthfully about the years spent in confusion and the pressure to maintain the America's mother image. She once believed she had a normal life until her true feelings surfaced and she realized she had been playing her longest role yet within her own home. Meredith Baxter's coming out had a massive impact because it shattered the stereotype that gay people were only the young or the rebellious. She proved that sexual orientation is a journey of self-discovery with no age limit. Despite initially facing significant criticism from conservative viewers, Meredith chose to respond with sincerity. She became an active advocate for women's and LGBTQ+ rights, using her influence as a national mother figure to deliver the message, "It is never too late to start living your own life." Meredith's journey was the awakening of a generation, but there were those who, even as they entered the new century, still carried the fears of the past into the final years of their careers. 10. Richard Chamberlain. The Fear of the Thornbirds. Actor Richard Chamberlain was the king of the miniseries in the 80s. His role as Father Ralph in the Thornbirds made him the dream man for millions of women worldwide. With his handsome, dashing looks and mesmerizing voice, Richard seemed to have it all. But few knew that every time he received passionate love letters from female fans, he was overwhelmed by a sense of guilt and fear. That fear was so great that Richard waited until 2003 at age 69 to publish his memoir, Shattered Love, to reveal the truth. Why would an A-list star, a man of such power, wait so long? The answer lay in the harshness of the Hollywood machinery that Richard understood all too well. He knew that if he had come out in the 70s or 80s, his career as a romantic lead would have ended instantly. Producers would never have cast an openly gay man as a dashing male protagonist. "I still carry the fear of a child growing up in an era where being gay was unacceptable," Richard shared in a later interview. The truth about his long-term relationship with actor Martin Rabbitt. only came to light when he felt he had nothing left to lose in his old age. Richard Chamberlain represents a generation of talented artists suffocated by the very image they created. His life is like the song of the bird in the thorn bush, painful, desperate, yet full of pride when finally allowed to speak the truest voice of its heart. As people like Richard and Meredith began to speak out, the world changed. However, there were still secrets carried to the grave, leaving behind only clues in faded diaries or declassified post-production documents. 11. Robert Reed, America's Dad and the Silent Pain. Throughout the 1970s, Robert Reed embodied the standard of moral excellence in every American home through his role as Mike Brady in the classic series, The Brady Bunch. On screen, he taught children about honesty and understanding. But in real life, Robert lived a completely fractured existence. As a classically trained stage actor from London, he always felt a profound conflict, playing a perfect father in a light-hearted sitcom, while hiding a secret that could have destroyed the entire production team. The truth about Robert Reed's sexual orientation only became widely known to his co-stars and the public after his death in 1992. The most shocking detail lay in his death certificate. While the cause of death was listed as colon cancer, there was an additional note regarding the presence of the HIV virus. According to post-production documents and accounts from the Brady Bunch cast, Robert kept his illness a secret until his final days. He feared that if the truth were revealed, a model family image of the show would be tarnished, affecting the future of the child actors he loved so dearly. Robert Reed's death was a cultural shock. It forced the American public to face a harsh reality. Even the father they trusted most on television lived in constant fear of rejection. Robert sacrificed his personal freedom to protect a glittering but artificial American dream. He passed away in the solitude of a masked hero, leaving behind a legacy of devotion, but also a painful reminder of how cruel society once was toward those who were different. While Robert Reed used silence to protect a family image, the next figure chose to use satirical humor as a shield so that no one could touch his true pain. 12. Paul Lynde, sarcastic laughter. Behind the glass closet. Paul Lynde never officially came out as gay during his lifetime, but he didn't bother to hide it in the traditional sense either. He was a peculiar Hollywood phenomenon, a comedian with an overtly campy style who frequently made suggestive double entendres about gender on national television during the show Hollywood Squares. Audiences roared with laughter at his sharp-witted answers, but there seemed to be a silent pact between Paul and the public. As long as he didn't say the word gay, they would continue to view it as merely a humorous act. However, behind those roars of laughter was a bitter soul. Colleagues recounted that Paul Lynde frequently fell into bouts of drunkenness and irrational anger, the consequence of living in a state of limbo, where everyone knew the truth, but no one allowed him to live authentically. According to his biography, The Paul Lynde Story, he yearned for serious dramatic roles but was constantly pigeonholed into fey comedic characters. The entertainment industry only wanted to exploit his difference for amusement, never accepting him as a whole human being. Paul's death in 1982 from a heart attack left many questions. He was found alone at his home, and the stories of his life in the shadows only began to surface through the accounts of his closest friends. Paul Lynde is a testament to the entrapment of the artist. He was too famous to hide, but too different to be integrated. He used humor as a weapon for self-defense, but in the end it was solitude that gnawed at him from the inside. While Paul Lynde used laughter as a distraction, another entertainment legend chose to preserve his secrets in the private diaries of a partner, who was a man. 13. Danny Kaye, Diaries and the Affair with Laurence Olivier. Danny Kaye was one of the most multi-talented artists in history, an actor, singer, dancer, and the first ambassador for UNICEF. He had a marriage spanning decades with songwriter Sylvia Fine, the woman who masterminded his illustrious career. But behind this picture of a stable marriage was an open secret within the Hollywood and London elites a profound relationship between Danny Kaye and the legendary stage icon Laurence Olivier. This relationship was more than just a rumor. After Laurence Olivier passed away, his private diaries and correspondence were released, revealing surprising details. Renowned biographer Donald Spoto recorded that Olivier and Kaye shared a passionate romance lasting many years, originating from their joint tours. They were not just colleagues, but souls who found resonance in each other amidst the crushing pressures of fame. Sylvia Fine, Danny's wife, reportedly accepted this reality and continued to maintain the marriage as a power alliance to protect her husband's career. Danny Kaye's silence regarding his private life was a calculated move. He understood that the image of a family-friendly entertainer could not coexist with the sexual scandals of that era. He chose to devote himself entirely to charity and art, carrying his secrets about Olivier to the grave in 1987. Danny Kaye's story poses a significant question. Does an artist need to expose the whole truth to be considered authentic? Or is keeping private spaces hidden also a way to protect the things that are most sacred? Danny Kaye's silence bore the colors of compromise, but for the next Iron Lady, silence was a tactic for survival in a world where men held all the power of life and death. 14. Barbara Stanwyck, The Iron Lady and the Secret Protection Network. If there was one actress who commanded the most caution from the paparazzi, it was Barbara Stanwyck. Strong, tough, and intensely professional, she was the star of femme fatale and powerhouse roles in film noir. However, the Hollywood underground had long whispered about a secret network of gay and bisexual actresses with Barbara as a central figure. Following her failed marriage to actor Robert Taylor, a union also suspected to be a studio arrangement, Barbara never remarried and spent most of her time surrounded by a circle of close female friends. Declassified documents from close friends like Axel Madsen, author of Stanwyck, suggest she had deep romantic relationships with women, but used her power and cold exterior to stifle any budding rumors. She never explained, she never justified. Her approach to the press mirrored the characters she played, sharp and seamless. Barbara Stanwyck's discretion was so successful that until her death in 1990, her private life remained an impregnable fortress. This very toughness helped Barbara maintain her A-list status for over 60 years. She understood that in her era, a powerful woman was hard enough to accept. A powerful gay woman would be a thorn the studio system would surely seek to remove. Barbara Stanwyck chose to live by her own rules, protecting the women around her, with a shield of steel carrying the truth of her sexuality into eternity, as one of the greatest secrets of black and white cinema. Closing this list is perhaps the most controversial name, a man whose family image became a matter of faith for millions, making the truths about him a question of historical respect. 15. Paul Newman, Speculation and the Protection of an Icon. Including Paul Newman on this list is not to assert an obvious fact, but to analyze the power of image protection in Hollywood. Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward were considered the golden marriage, a symbol of fidelity in a world full of temptation. However, in 2009, Darwin Porter's biography, Paul Newman, A Life, sent shockwaves through the industry by providing details of his alleged same-sex relationships with colleagues like Marlon Brando and James Dean during his youth. The reaction from the public and the Newman family was a fierce denial. Yet from a historical perspective, this is a fascinating case of grounded speculation. Some researchers suggest that, like many artists of his time, Paul Newman may have had experiences of self-discovery during his rebellious years in New York, before building his image as a model family man in Hollywood. The existence of these rumors, whether true or false, highlights a reality. Hollywood always tends to sanctify its icons, turning them into flawless archetypes to satisfy the public's emotional needs. Paul Newman passed away in 2008, leaving behind an immortal legacy as the perfect man. Whether Darwin Porter's writings are the truth or merely fragmented pieces of the past, they do not diminish his stature. They simply remind us that behind those piercing blue eyes and heroic roles, every human being has their own inner battles and secrets they have the right to keep. Hollywood can create stars, but it is these secrets that truly make them human. Closing the files on these 15 legends, we realize that the golden age of Hollywood was built not only on talent, but on silent, brutal sacrifices. The plays of life that Rock Hudson, Raymond Burr, or Barbara Stanwyck had to perform off-camera were often heavier than any role on the silver screen. They chose to hide their identities, burn their love letters, and live in arranged marriages just to keep the public's dream intact. Today, as society's gaze has become more open, these stories are not told to judge or expose, but for us to understand and appreciate. They were artists who traded their personal freedom to become immortal icons. The truth about them, whether admitted in life or revealed through yellowed diaries after they passed, is a testament to the most human of desires, to love and to be loved for who we truly are. What do you think about the price of fame these legends had to pay? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to join us as we uncover other haunting corners of world cinema history. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next case file.